Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Ontario Rat number 2, but a little bit different. Put together by EDCGearHouse and WayOfKnife there. So first off, before we go any further, I want to thank EDCGearHouse and, it's not the manufacturer, they're the modders, right? They were provided by the WayOfKnife folks, right? These folks are up in Traverse City, and they said, hey Nick, we've got these fancy Rat 2s, are you interested? Knowing that I am a big proponent of the Rat 2, I said absolutely, but as always, talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be junk. They did still send it along. We have to assume this is the best quality controlled one of these guys ever, and I'm doing my best not to let this affect the nature of my review, but there you go, full disclosure. Next thing, size comparison. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2. Here it is against the Spyderco Delica and the PM2, and if you have gotten through any part of my channel yet and you have no idea how big a Rat 2 is, I feel like you probably, there were other issues here, but either way, that's how big it is. Then actually, here it is against the Ontario Rat number 1. This is an unmodified version, but I should be clear, they do a fully modified version of the Rat 1 too, if you're looking for something a little bit on the bigger side there. But anyways, so there is that. What is this thing? Well, this is a Rat 2, but at the same time, it's different. It's not an OS 8 blade or a D2 blade. Instead, it's M390, which is nice. The scales are not cheapy plastic. They are titanium anodized. The clip is from an entirely different knife. The clip is, the whole thing is a little bit different. And then they lasered some jackass's logo on there for some reason. But anyways, I digress. This is a very fancified Rat number 2, and it's, you're paying for that privilege, right? The Rat 2 D2 is usually about 40 bucks. Here, about $205 with the various finishes shown. If you go to a stock finish, you're at $170, and you can use their customizer right on their website, and you can choose all of the various options. You can choose exactly what you want, so to speak. But it's $50 premium to get the M390 in any model, and like I said, they also do the Rat 1, and they work on existing knives. But rather than re-review the Rat 2, because there is a lot that's just basically the Rat 2 here, I'm going to focus instead on the good and the bad of these particular changes, of going full bougie on the Rat 2, so to speak. So let's go ahead and talk about what I'm loving, what I'm not loving so much, and do the final conclusion. So on the good side, to start with, this set of mods actually kind of addresses all of the things that make the Rat a little less than perfect, right? The little Rat 2 here is, you have OS 8, which is, it's a steel, and then you've got D2, and D2 is a steel that holds an edge for a reasonable amount of time, but unfortunately it is not very stainless at all, which means that if you are a swamp witch or something similar, you are going to have rust issues on this guy. M390 is not a steel that is completely stainless, unlike some, but it is, however, it is much more stain resistant. You shouldn't have much in the way of corrosion problems with that, and so with M390 you get very good edge holding, better than D2 for what it's worth generally, and also very good stainlessness, and that's a beautiful thing. It also gets rid of the cheapy plastic, which is not terrible, but definitely, well, it makes it feel more like a budget knife, and swaps in something that is much more interesting, much more impressive, right? So that's good. And it is a very customizable approach, right? Because you're doing this with a set of gear modders, right? I mean, that's kind of how the EDCGearHouse people, or WayOfKnife, that is, that's how they're known, right? Is they do a bunch of mods, and you can choose whatever you'd like. Choose colors, you can choose different options, you can make something that is basically your own, and you get all kinds of different finishes and things like that, ranging from good vanilla anodization to more crazy stuff, etc. You got a lot of options there, and so this provides a canvas. I mean, custom knives are very rare these days, but customizable is much more common, and this is a very nice example of that kind of thing. Next thing, the clip on this guy is a little bit nicer in the hand in that it is much more rounded, right? It's a little wide, it's nice and round over the top here. I appreciate that very much. It feels pretty good, and especially at the very top, yeah, it works. It's a nice clip. The blade on this guy is very nice. Now, it's M390, and M390 is, chemically speaking, a great steel, but more importantly, according to their website, they have done 59 to 61 Rockwell hardness is the target range here, and talking to them, they thought a fair amount about the heat treat that they're doing here. So I have to assume that this is going to perform pretty well here. It's not just like, oh yeah, it's M390. As a lot of folks are doing, they seem to be really trying to get good performance here, and in my very, very basic testing, I'm not claiming to have done anything, but it seems to perform as I would want M390 to perform, and it'll certainly beat the pants out of both OS 8 and D2, and so that's a beautiful thing. And then they've retained the nice thin grind on this guy. This is not now a super thick, oh my god, knife. No, you can see it still comes out to a very nice thin edge on both sides. It retains all the things that made it a good thing to start with. It just does it in a steel that's a little bit bit chemically improved. So I appreciate that very much. Then finally, on the good side, honestly, this is a great way to celebrate a favorite knife. If you are a person who, like me, loves the Rat 2, this is a way to make the Rat 2 a whole different, to take it to another level, to kick it up a notch, so to speak. And I appreciate that. And I think the Rat series is a series of knives that are worth celebrating because they just are that damn good. And so to me, that's what's great here, is that this is that's the good here, is that it's a great way to celebrate a knife that I think deserves some celebration. It's got a very nice blade with a well-heat treated M390. It's got a good clip, which is a little nicer in the hand. It's very customizable, and it gets to some of the shortcomings here. On the bad side, one thing that you'll notice is that the clip here is only attached by 2 holes, and unfortunately, it has a bit of a tendency to move around a little bit as a result. Right, so the clip is not exactly for this knife and feels a little bit more on the janky side. The other thing you'll notice is that the screws don't actually go all the way through into the liner here. So in a lot of ways, although I think this looks a little bit better, I think functionally speaking, the stock clip is a little bit more secure. And I think the stock clip is a little bit of an improvement in terms of raw functionality. Next thing, this does still retain the same packet of phosphor bronze under Teflon there, and that's, I don't know, this is just bias, but I just don't like Teflon washes, right? I think if we want something permanent, Plasticho isn't the way to go with it, right? I'd like to see them upgrade those too, because it's a little bit shaky, and it still makes the action maybe a little less than it could be on a really nice phosphor bronze thing. On the bad side also, well, you've made the $40 knife now $200. And this is something that makes a lot of sense if you love the Rat 2. If you absolutely love this design, then by God, it's pretty solid. But, this is best thought of as a capstone for your Rat 2 collection, rather than being the best $200 knife, right? There are a lot of great knives out there for $200, and I'm not even sure that this is going to be the one that I would send somebody to. The Rat 2 is great because of its value. When you upgrade it like this, I don't know, it's a little bit of a different calculus, right? And there's a lot, the sky is your oyster. Wow, the sky's the limit and the world is your oyster. Heck, the sky's your oyster, I don't know. But either way, there's a lot that you can do under $200. The sky is your oyster down there, and so as a result, I don't know that I would send you here, strictly speaking. Next thing, the balance on this guy does move back a little bit. On this guy, the balance point for the knife is about here, with these extra heavier titanium scales, as opposed to on the original, where the balance is a little bit further front, a little bit more close to here. And also the knife gets a little bit heavier as well, as you might expect from replacing plastic with metal, right? So we go, this version is 3.87 ounces. As opposed to 2.77 ounces. That is a full extra ounce and change. There's definitely a little bit more there. So there is definitely that. The balance moves back and the knife does become heavier. Then finally, we are forced to contend with a major philosophical question, which is this a Rat 2 anymore? Now that they've changed the scales, the blade, the clip, this gives us the idea of the ship of Theseus, right? Which is a centuries-old question, a victorious old ship kept in a harbor as a museum. And, as is the case with wooden ships, the planks rot away, and every time a plank rots away, you replace the plank, and so over a long enough time, you're going to have no part left of the original ship, even though it is still the same thing. But is it the same thing, right? And so we have the same issue here. This is the ship of Theseus, Ontario Rat number 2, right? I would side generally with the cognitive science folks who argue that with the ship of Theseus or the Ontario Rat 2 here, the only thing that's remaining of the original is our conception, our link in internal relationship to the original object, right? Such that a young child seeing the fully replaced version would never have known the original, although the label is still applied to it by the adults, so this new version to them is just the Rat number 2, or the ship of Theseus. But in both cases, even though nearly every part has been replaced, it fits our cognitive schema, I think, for what Rat 2 should be, in the same way that other Rat 2 knives do in function, form, design, interaction, idea. And as a result, this is probably a Rat 2, even though there's very, very little left over. Therefore, I would argue that this does remain a Rat 2, and that does remain the ship of Theseus, but only because of our own internal schema of what a Rat 2 should be. And because it's using the same line as in Backspace. Anyways, so to me, all of that is the bad, is that it forces us to have big theoretical, philosophical questions. The balance moves back a bit. It gets a little heavier. You turn the $40 knife into a $200 one. It's still using the Teflon there, and the clip is a little bit on the janky side, even though it does look pretty good. On the final conclusion front, look, this is a pretty entertaining tribute to a great knife, right? and adds some very nice improvements to the problem points of the original by swapping the plastic scales for titanium, by adding a budget steel, letting you customize a little bit more, putting in a little bit more ergonomic clip, adding in a very nice blade, and a feeling of kind of, I don't know, it's like a love letter to the Rat 2 that I do kind of appreciate. I mean, like I said, the clip's a little on the janky side. They probably should have swapped out that Teflon while they were in there. It could use I don't know. It could use a little bit different balance point in the weight, although that's kind of the nature of the beast when you put in the metal there. And it is very expensive, built on a budget core, and it forces us to confront a centuries-old question about the true nature of identity. Final conclusion, though, is that the Rat 2 is honestly it's a really nice knife. It's a really nice design, right? There's not really that much wrong with the original Rat 2 that the price tag doesn't force, right? It's using a budget steel because it's a budget knife. It's using a budget scale because it's a budget knife, etc. And so this, addressing those issues and taking this out of those categories is kind of a great thing. That said, I don't know that I would start here, right? If you are interested in this, I would just pick up a Rat 2 in D2 steel. I wouldn't bother with the OS8 unless you need the stainlessness and love sharpening and want to do it a lot. I don't know that I would go there, but nonetheless, get yourself a Rat 2 D2. Then, and you can even customize it to your liking. You don't have to go full on to use their little customize it thing, but that'll give you a sense of whether you love the model itself, right? And then you just use it day in, day out. Get a sense of it. If you're loving it, but you wish you had a little bit fancier scales, you want a little bit more weight, then do the thigh. Or if you're loving it, but you realize, oh man, the D2's rusting on me, or oh man, I wish I had better edge retention, then go for the M390, right? You can do those upgrades down the road, right? But this isn't where I would start the Rat journey. This is, right? This is almost as good. This is a little improvement on there. But the thing is, at the same time, this is mostly, I think, going to interest people who already love the Rat 2, who want to show that love. Maybe collectors who have gotten themselves a Rat 2 and have carried it, but then after a while their taste got all fancy, they got all bougie about it, like, oh, I don't know, it's not titanium, it's not M390, I don't know if I can still bring myself to carry it. Hey, that's snobbish and a little bit silly, but the thing is, more importantly, this could bring a lot of people a lot of joy, right? If somebody thinks, this is my favorite knife and therefore I got a favorite fancy version of it, I love it, right? Or folks who love the design and gone higher end, that's a beautiful thing. If they want a knife that they already love at levels they've come to expect, this is great. And so, is this a gem? Is it? I don't know. I mean, it's the same. It is a gem because it's the ship of Theseus of a gem, right? But it's more expensive. The thing is, it's an option. And I think that's the important thing about this guy, right? It is an option for somebody out there in the world who is going, wow, I really wish they made this knife but fancier. Well, now they do, and I think that's an absolutely beautiful thing. I just think that there are going to be people out there for whom this is exactly what the doctor ordered, and they're going to be like, oh, yes, and a bunch of other people are going to be like, what, why? And you know what? That's the beauty of the world. There's something for everybody, even Theseus. Although, is it the same something that there always was for him, or is it something... Okay, anyways, I digress. Hope this has been interesting to you, that we have finally, once and for all, solved the nature of identity in the world, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.